May Govannen, fellow explorers of Middle-earth. Picture this. The One Ring has been destroyed. Sauron's tower crumbles. His vast armies scatter like leaves in a hurricane. But here's the question that's been haunting Tolkien fans for decades. What happened to the thousands upon thousands of orcs that didn't die in that final battle? Did they all just disappear? Or are there still orcs lurking in the deepest caves of Middle-earth waiting for their moment to return? Hi, I'm Max, your host at Campfire Dunedain, and today we're diving into one of the most chilling mysteries in Tolkien's legendarium, and trust me, the answer might surprise you. Chapter 1, The Immediate Aftermath, Chaos and Collapse. When the ring was destroyed, Tolkien describes what happened to Sauron's forces. So, the creatures of Sauron orc or troll or beast, spell-enslaved, ran hither and thither mindless, and some slew themselves, or cast themselves in pits, or fled wailing back to hide in holes and dark, lightless places far from hope. The orcs had spent their entire existence under Sauron's dominating will. When that suddenly vanished, most went completely mad, but pay attention to Tolkien's exact words. Some slew themselves, and some fled. Not all of them died that day. In Mordor itself, most orcs either went insane or killed themselves. But what about the ones scattered across Middle-earth? The orcs in Moria? In Dol Guldur? In the Misty Mountains? Celeborn led an assault on Dol Guldur, and Galadriel threw down its walls and laid bare its pits, and the forest was cleansed. But even the elves couldn't hunt down every last orc in Middle-earth. And that's where our story really begins. Chapter 2. The Survivors. They've done this before. Most people assume Sauron's defeat meant instant extinction for all orcs, but there's a crucial piece of history that suggests otherwise. When Morgoth, Sauron's master, was defeated at the end of the First Age, what happened to his orcs? They survived. Tolkien tells us plainly that the orcs continued to live and breed and to carry on their business of ravaging and plundering after Morgoth was overthrown. Orcs had already proven they could outlast their dark lords. They could survive independently and even reproduce without magical intervention. This wasn't their first rodeo. The appendices mention that after Sauron's defeat, King Elessar had many enemies to subdue before the White Tree could grow in peace. These weren't Sauron's foreign allies. These were enemies already hiding in Middle-earth's dark places. The clearest example is Moria. Those mines were still crawling with orcs years after the War of the Ring. The dwarves had to fight to reclaim their ancestral home, which means there were organised orc communities thriving well into the Fourth Age. Think about that for a moment. If the orcs of Moria could maintain their numbers long enough to resist the dwarves, what about orcs in places nobody was actively trying to reclaim? But it gets even more interesting when we look at what the survivors were actually planning. Chapter 3. The hunt begins, but not everyone was found. The Fourth Age saw humanity expand across Middle-earth like never before. The reunited kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor pushed their borders outward. New settlements appeared in previously wild lands. Wherever men expanded, they encountered remaining orcs and dealt with them accordingly. The major orc strongholds were systematically eliminated. But Middle-earth is enormous. Mountain ranges stretching hundreds of miles, forests larger than entire countries, underground networks that could hide small armies. What about the scattered groups, the ones who learned to avoid human contact entirely? That conversation between Shagrat and Gorbag becomes crucial here. They weren't just complaining about their situation, they were planning an escape. Listen to this again. If we get a chance, you and me'll slip off and set up somewhere on our own with a few trusty lads, somewhere where there's good loot nice and handy and no big bosses. They wanted to disappear completely, find remote places where they could survive without interference. And here's the thing, some of them probably managed exactly that. But there's another factor we haven't considered yet. These orcs had something their ancestors under Morgoth never had. Generations of experience living in a world where dark lords rise and fall. They'd learned to be survivors. The smartest orcs would have realized that the age of great armies was over. The future belonged to small hidden groups that could stay off everyone's radar. And in a world as vast as Middle-earth, with its countless forgotten valleys and abandoned ruins, That was entirely possible. Chapter 4. The Unanswered Question. What Tolkien Never Told Us. Tolkien began writing a sequel called The New Shadow, set about 100 to 200 years into the Fourth Age. Orcs are completely absent from his notes. The enemies in this story were corrupted. Men, not orcs. This could mean orcs went extinct, but there's another possibility. Tolkien abandoned The New Shadow because he found it too depressing. He never finished exploring what the Fourth Age actually looked like. The absence of orcs might not mean extinction. It might mean they'd learned to stay hidden. They could have retreated so far into the wilderness that they'd become more legend than reality. After all, if you're trying to avoid detection, the best strategy is to never be detected at all. Tolkien wrote something intriguing about orcs in letter 153. I nearly wrote irredeemably bad, but that would be going too far. Because by accepting or tolerating their making, even orcs would become part of the world which is God's and ultimately good. This suggests that orcs freed from domination might have found their own path. Not necessarily redemption, but something different from the mindless evil they'd been forced into. What if some orc communities over the centuries developed their own cultures, their own ways of life that didn't revolve around constant warfare? And here's where it gets really fascinating. The Fourth Age eventually gave way to later ages. Tolkien suggested his Middle-earth was our ancient past. If any orcs survived long enough, they might have adapted to a world where magic was fading and the old powers were disappearing. Every culture on Earth has legends of small hostile creatures in dark places. Goblins, cave dwellers, things that shun the light and emerge only at night. Could these stories be distant memories of encounters with the descendants of orcs? We know that some creatures from the Elder Days survived into our world. Most likely, the majority of orcs died out within a few centuries of Sauron's defeat. But in a world as vast as Middle-earth, with its countless hidden valleys and forgotten places, absolute certainty is impossible. Some orcs might have survived much longer than anyone expected. They might have learned to live quietly, to avoid the expanding kingdoms of men, to make homes in places so remote that no human would ever find them. We'll probably never know for sure, and maybe that's exactly how Tolkien intended it. The professor loved his mysteries, his unanswered questions, his hints at deeper truths that readers would have to discover for themselves. So the next time you hear a strange sound in the mountains or catch a glimpse of something moving in the shadows of an ancient forest, remember that Middle-earth's children had a way of surviving long after everyone thought they were gone. What do you think happened to the last orc in Middle-earth? Did they all truly vanish, or could some still be lurking in the deepest places of the world? Share your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries Tolkien left unsolved. And if you haven't seen our previous video about the dark origins of the first orcs, go check that out. Until next time, stay safe and stay by the fire.